When state police officers violate a civilian's Fourth Amendment rights to obtain evidence unlawfully, what happens to that evidence? To find out, you have to read Mapp versus Ohio, but it's 43 pages. Don't have time for that? I've got you covered. This is TLDR, the channel where I normally cover New York Court of Appeals cases and try to do it in 5 minutes or less. This is the episode on the landmark case of Mapp versus Ohio. The citation for this case is 367 U.S. 643. It was published on June 19, 1961. This decision by the United States Supreme Court put a spotlight on the Fourth Amendment's protection against unreasonable searches and seizures. It addressed the open question of whether violation of the amendment had a consequence at the state level, and what impact results from that kind of constitutional violation. To fully appreciate how this case fits in, one must understand the legal backdrop. Central to our discussion is the Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution, an integral part of the Bill of Rights. The Fourth Amendment is designed to protect citizens from unreasonable searches and seizures. In essence, it asserts that law enforcement may not conduct a search and seizure without a warrant issued upon probable cause. But the amendment is silent as to what happens if law enforcement violates that constitutional requirement. In 1914, the U.S. Supreme Court decided a case called Weeks versus United States, in which they held that any evidence obtained by federal law enforcement officers would be inadmissible in federal criminal proceedings. This is known as the exclusionary rule, because evidence is excluded from use by the prosecution if its acquisition violated the constitutional. The concept is that this creates an incentive for federal law enforcement to conduct searches properly, because if they don't, they cannot use the improperly obtained evidence. But cases have also held that this exclusionary rule did not necessarily apply to state law enforcement officers. In 1949, the U.S. Supreme Court decided in Wolf versus Colorado that the Fourth Amendment did not apply to state prosecutions and state law enforcement. This created an inconsistency between federal and state law enforcement. If federal law enforcement violated the Fourth Amendment, evidence would be suppressed. If state law enforcement did the same thing, the evidence would not be suppressed. So, what are the facts? Our story unfolds in Cleveland, Ohio, the residence of Dalry Mapp. In May of 1961, the police received a tip-off concerning a suspected bombing fugitive supposedly hiding in Mapp's home. Acting on this tip, the police knocked on Mapp's door, demanding entry. Mapp, however, sought legal advice and was told not to allow the police in without a search warrant. Returning hours later, the police brandished a piece of paper they claimed was a warrant, but it wasn't. It was just a trick. Mapp grabbed the paper, a scuffle ensued, and the paper was snatched back by the police. They proceeded to search her house, but the fugitive was nowhere to be found. Instead, the police discovered allegedly obscene materials in a suitcase belonging to a previous tenant. Mapp was arrested, not for harboring a fugitive, but for the possession of these materials. Therefore, a search had occurred without a warrant, resulting in the seizure of evidence by state law enforcement. The stage was now set for a legal showdown. The legal journey of Mapp v. Ohio was far from straightforward. Miss Mapp was convicted, and after Dalry Mapp's initial conviction in an Ohio court, her case wound its way up the judicial ladder. The Ohio Supreme Court upheld her conviction, despite the questionable means by which evidence was obtained. Undeterred, Mapp took her fight for justice further, appealing to the United States Supreme Court. This was a bold move, a gamble that would either uphold or upend the standing legal precedent. An appeal to the highest court in the land, Mapp v. Ohio was poised to make history. In a landmark decision, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of Mapp. The majority held that the evidence obtained in violation of the Fourth Amendment, which protects against unreasonable searches and seizures, cannot be used in state law criminal prosecutions just as it couldn't be used federally. Thus, the exclusionary rule was extended to state criminal prosecutions. Justice Tom C. Clark, writing for the majority, declared that the exclusionary rule is an essential part of both the Fourth Amendment and the basic right to privacy. He also emphasized that all evidence obtained by searches and seizures in violation of the Constitution is inadmissible in a state court. On the other side, the dissenting justices voiced their concerns. Justice Harlan, in his dissent, argued that the decision was an overreach of judicial power and feared that it would hinder law enforcement. Despite the dissent, the majority decision stood. The Mapp case resulted in a monumental shift in the interpretation of the Fourth Amendment, expanding its protections to state proceedings. A victory for Mapp, a redefinition of the Fourth Amendment, and a dissent that voiced concern. The ripples of Mapp v. Ohio have spread far and wide and continue to this day. This landmark decision established a universal, exclusionary rule, a principle that bars every criminal court, both state and federal, from admitting evidence obtained in violation of the Constitution. The rule has had a profound impact on law enforcement agencies, compelling them to respect constitutional rights during investigations. It has also significantly shaped the course of countless criminal trials. Critics argue that it lets guilty individuals go free, while proponents see it as a vital check against unlawful police conduct. Regardless of one's viewpoint, Mapp v. Ohio undeniably shifted the balance of power, emphasizing the importance of individual rights over law enforcement expediency. A case that forever changed the landscape of American criminal procedure, Mapp v. Ohio stands as a testament to the dynamic nature of law.
If you like what you just saw and want to see more just like it, please hit like or subscribe to let me know.